Don't let her swallow that. Abigail Brooks moved before anyone else in the room understood what she meant. The silver spoon slipped from Vanessa Sterling's hand and struck the polished marble floor with a bright little clink, sending the white pill rolling beneath Eleanor Moretti's wheelchair. For one long second, nobody spoke. Vanessa stood frozen beside the older woman, elegant in a cream dress that looked untouched by the long afternoon, while Abigail stared at the floor as if she had just realized what she had done. 3 members of the household staff watched from the doorway. Eleanor's nurse stopped with one hand on the medication cart. And 20 yards away, behind a locked security room hidden inside the West Wing, Adrian Moretti leaned closer to a bank of monitors. He was supposed to be in Boston. Vanessa believed he had left before sunrise. That was the point. His mother's health had been declining for weeks without a clear explanation, and Eleanor had told him something 2 nights earlier that he could not forget. People reveal themselves when they believe no one important is watching. So Adrian had announced a business trip, handed his driver an empty suitcase, and returned through a private entrance before dawn. Now the 6'4" Mafia Boss sat alone beneath the cool glow of security screens, tattooed forearms resting on the desk, his attention fixed on the woman he planned to marry and the maid who had just interrupted her. Vanessa recovered first. "Would you like to explain what you think you're doing?" Abigail looked down at her own untied shoelace, then at the expensive spoon on the floor. "I'm guessing apologizing for the spoon won't help." One of the housekeepers covered a smile. Vanessa did not. "You clean this room. You bring towels. You are not a doctor." Abigail's cheeks warmed. Her soft brown curls had already escaped their bun, and the gray uniform stretched awkwardly across her curvy frame after a full day of work. She looked completely out of place beneath the crystal chandelier, but she did not step back. "No, ma'am. I'm definitely not a doctor." "Then perhaps you should remember your position." The words were quiet, polished, almost polite. Somehow that made them sharper. Abigail lowered her eyes for half a heartbeat. Adrian watched closely. He had seen powerful men fold under less pressure. Abigail simply drew a slow breath and bent to retrieve the pill from beneath Eleanor's chair. "My position doesn't change what this is." She held the tablet between 2 fingers. Vanessa's expression tightened. "And what exactly do you think it is?" Abigail crossed to the medication cart and picked up the amber bottle. "Something Mrs. Moretti wasn't taking yesterday." Eleanor turned toward her. "Abby, it's okay, Mrs. Moretti." Abigail rotated the bottle beneath the lamp. "The label says this prescription was filled Monday." Vanessa folded her arms. "So?" Abigail looked at her. The nervousness was still there, but something steadier had settled beneath it. "So I've seen 3 different labels on this bottle since Tuesday." In the security room, Adrian stopped breathing for a moment. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. Tiny movement. Easy to miss. Adrian did not miss it. Neither did Abigail. And suddenly the question was no longer why the maid had interfered. The question was who had been changing his mother's medicine, and why someone inside his own home believed nobody would ever notice. Adrian did not rush into the room. He watched for another 10 seconds, long enough to see Vanessa place the medication bottle back on the cart with careful fingers, long enough to see Abigail glance at Eleanor instead of the door, and long enough to decide that whoever was lying had already made one mistake. Then the bedroom door opened. Every face turned. Vanessa went pale. "Adrian." He stepped inside wearing the same black shirt he had worn on the security feed, his sleeves pushed to his forearms, dark ink visible beneath the warm light. He did not explain why he was still in Chicago. He did not raise his voice. "Nobody touches the medication." The nurse immediately stepped away from the cart. Vanessa stared at him. "You told me you were leaving. Plans changed." His gaze moved to Abigail. "Show me." She crossed the room and placed the pill in his open palm. Her fingers almost brushed his, then pulled away too quickly. "It looks different from the one she had yesterday morning." Adrian examined it without pretending he understood more than he did. "How would you know?" Abigail hesitated. "Because your mother hates taking medicine with plain water. She likes warm tea with honey, but only half a teaspoon because she says more than that tastes like dessert pretending to be useful." Eleanor gave the faintest smile. Abigail continued. "I bring it to her every morning. I see what she takes." Vanessa let out a quiet breath. "So the maid has been handling Eleanor's medication every day." Abigail looked at her. "I handle the tray, not the bottles." "You just handled that one." Vanessa pointed toward the cart. Adrian watched both women, saying nothing. The room had become strangely still, but Abigail could feel the attention pressing against her from every direction. "Fine," she said. "That sounds worse when you say it like that." Adrian's eyes shifted toward her. "You joke when you are nervous. I also organize closets when I am nervous, but this seemed faster." Eleanor made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Vanessa did not react. "Adrian, this is getting absurd. If there is a problem with the prescription, call Dr. Mason. But you cannot seriously be taking accusations from someone who has worked here for 4 months. 3 months and 26 days, Abigail said automatically. Vanessa looked at her. Abigail winced. That probably did not help either. Adrian turned to Marcus Reed, who had appeared in the doorway behind him. "Seal the medication cabinet. Photograph every label. Call the pharmacy and Dr. Mason separately. No one speaks to either of them about what happened here until I say so." Marcus nodded and moved toward the cart. Vanessa crossed her arms. "And what exactly happens to me?" "Nothing yet." Adrian's answer came without heat. Somehow that frightened her more. 20 minutes later, the household staff had been dismissed. Eleanor was resting, and the bottle sat inside a clear evidence pouch on the desk in Adrian's study. Marcus entered carrying a tablet. "We ran the first set of prints." Adrian looked up. Abigail stood near the fireplace, twisting the hem of her uniform between her fingers. Vanessa sat perfectly straight on the sofa. Marcus hesitated before turning the screen around. "There are several partial prints, but one set is clear enough to identify." Abigail stopped moving. Marcus looked directly at her. "They belong to Miss Brooks." Vanessa did not smile. She did not need to. Adrian studied Abigail for several seconds, then pushed the tablet across the desk toward her. "Tell me why your fingerprints are on my mother's medicine." Abigail stared at the tablet, then at the sealed bottle on Adrian's desk. "Because I picked it up 20 minutes ago." Marcus blinked. Vanessa's chin lifted slightly. Adrian looked from the screen to Marcus. "Were the prints dated?" Marcus exhaled through his nose. "No." Abigail raised one hand. "I am not trying to tell trained security people how fingerprints work, but unless mine came with a tiny calendar attached, I think we just proved that I touched something everyone watched me touch." For the first time, Marcus looked almost embarrassed. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her with a different kind of attention. "Not softer, more precise. Anything else?" Abigail stopped fidgeting. A memory had surfaced, small and strange. Eleanor sitting by the window 2 mornings earlier, the medicine cup near her mouth, her eyes shifting toward the nurse, her hand moving to the embroidered handkerchief in her lap. Mrs. Moretti does not always swallow her pills. Vanessa turned sharply. "What?" Abigail looked at Adrian. "Sometimes she pretends. I thought she was being stubborn. She told me one of them made her feel foggy, so once or twice she tucked it into her handkerchief when nobody was looking." Adrian was already standing. They returned to Eleanor's bedroom, where the lamps had been dimmed and the older woman slept beneath a pale blue blanket. Abigail opened the drawer beside the reading chair. Nothing. Then she checked the small sewing basket Eleanor kept near the window. Beneath a spool of white thread sat a folded linen handkerchief. Abigail opened it carefully. A single tablet rested inside. It was not the same color as the pill from Vanessa's spoon. Marcus sealed it separately. By 11 that night, Dr. Mason had arrived, offended by Adrian's questions, and even more offended when Marcus refused to let him near the samples. Adrian sent both tablets to an independent laboratory used by one of his legitimate companies. The preliminary result came back after midnight. The medication was not immediately dangerous in the amount prescribed. That should have been comforting. It was not. "It is a sedative," Marcus said, reading from the report. "Strong enough to cause confusion, weakness, memory problems, especially in someone her age." Adrian's eyes narrowed. So whoever changed the dose was not trying to kill her. Abigail stood near the doorway, arms folded around herself against the chill coming from the windows. They were trying to make sure nobody believed her. The sentence stayed in the room. Adrian looked toward the ceiling, toward the floor above them where his mother slept. Then the intercom crackled. The nurse's voice came through, hurried but controlled. "Mr. Moretti, your mother is awake. She is asking for Abigail." They reached Eleanor's room less than a minute later. The older woman looked smaller than before, but her eyes were clear. She reached for Abigail's hand and held it tightly. "You noticed," she whispered. Abigail knelt beside her. "I noticed something." Eleanor looked past her toward Adrian. Fear crossed her face, not of him, but for him. She pulled Abigail closer and spoke so quietly that Adrian almost missed it. Do not let him marry her. At the half-open doorway, Vanessa Sterling had stopped walking. Vanessa did not move from the doorway. For several seconds, the only sound in Eleanor's room came from the soft hum of the air vent and the faint ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Adrian turned toward his fiancée. Vanessa met his eyes without flinching. I heard her, she said. Abigail rose slowly from beside the bed, still holding Eleanor's hand. Adrian watched Vanessa with the same measured focus he used when someone gave him an answer he did not fully trust. Then you know what I am going to ask. Vanessa walked into the room and placed her phone on the dresser. Then she removed a second phone from her purse, followed by a slim leather planner. Take them. Marcus looked surprised. Vanessa did not. My calendar, my messages, my calls. You can have access to every account I use. If your mother believes I am trying to hurt her, I want to know why. Adrian studied her. That was fast. Because I have nothing to hide from you. Abigail noticed something strange in the way Vanessa said it. Not fear. Not even anger. More like someone stepping onto thin ice, because standing still would be worse. Eleanor's eyes closed again, exhaustion pulling her under before she could explain further. The nurse checked her pulse and asked everyone to leave. In the hallway, Abigail stopped beside the medication cart. There is one thing. Adrian turned. Vanessa did too. Mrs. Moretti did not seem confused every day. Abigail rubbed her thumb against the edge of her apron while thinking. She had good mornings. Really good ones. She would remember what book she was reading, complain about the coffee, and beat me at cards. Marcus lifted an eyebrow. Cards. She cheats. From inside the room, Eleanor's faint voice drifted through the door. I do not. Abigail smiled despite herself. Then the smile faded. The bad days usually came after physical therapy. Adrian's attention sharpened. Marcus opened the household schedule on his tablet. The dates lined up almost perfectly. Therapy sessions. Increased weakness. Confusion by evening. Vanessa stepped closer to the screen. Dr. Mason supervises those sessions. By sunrise, Adrian had ordered every medical invoice, pharmacy authorization, and therapy record from the last 2 months reviewed. Dr. Caleb Mason arrived at 8:15 wearing an expensive navy coat and the expression of a man deeply insulted by being questioned in a house where he had worked for years. I have treated your mother since before you were old enough to sign your own checks, he said. Adrian stood across from him in the study. Then you should want the truth more than anyone. Mason's jaw tightened. Marcus placed several printed records on the desk. One authorization showed a dosage adjustment, requested after Eleanor's therapy assessment. The electronic signature belonged to Mason. Another record showed the replacement bottle had been approved through his office. Vanessa stared at the documents. Abigail felt a small, guilty wave of relief. Maybe the answer was simple. Maybe Vanessa had been telling the truth. Adrian did not relax. Why did you change the dosage? Mason looked at the paperwork, then at Vanessa. Something shifted in his face. I did not authorize this version. Marcus pointed to the signature. Your credentials were used. Mason gave a humorless laugh. That does not mean I used them. Adrian's gaze hardened. Then tell me who did. Mason remained quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, he looked directly at Vanessa. Ask your fiancée why she paid my daughter's hospital bill 3 weeks ago. Vanessa turned toward Dr. Mason so slowly that even Abigail stopped breathing. I paid the hospital directly, she said. Your daughter needed surgery. You told me the insurance delay could take weeks. Mason's face tightened. I never asked you to. No, you just mentioned it 3 times over dinner. Adrian shifted his attention between them, saying nothing. That was when Abigail understood why people feared his silence more than anger. He did not fill empty space. He made other people do it for him. Vanessa lifted her chin. If helping his daughter makes me guilty, then say it clearly. Mason looked away first. Marcus collected the financial records while Adrian ordered both of them to remain available for questioning. Vanessa left the study without another word. Mason followed under escort, still insisting someone had used his credentials. Abigail stayed near the bookshelf, uncertain whether she was supposed to disappear back into the staff hall or remain where she was. Adrian noticed. You are staying close to my mother until this is resolved. Close as in nearby, or close as in I now need permission to go to the grocery store? Nearby. Good. I was worried I had accidentally joined witness protection with better furniture. A faint crease appeared beside Adrian's mouth. Marcus saw it and quickly looked down at his tablet. Abigail pretended not to notice. An hour later, she carried tea toward Eleanor's room when her elbow bumped a small brass panel beside Adrian's office. A sharp alarm rang through the hallway. Abigail froze. Footsteps thundered from both ends of the corridor as security staff appeared almost instantly. Adrian stepped out of his office. What happened? Abigail stared at the glowing red button under her hand. I cleaned aggressively. Marcus closed his eyes. That is the panic alarm. Yes, I have gathered that from the dramatic response. Adrian reached past her and silenced it. Why were you touching it? There was dust on it. There was not. Abigail looked at the spotless wall. Then I have no defense. This time Adrian actually smiled, brief but unmistakable. It changed his face enough to catch her off guard. She looked away too late. You should do that more often, she said. His expression returned to its usual control. Set off alarms. Smile. Although apparently I am talented at the first one. She continued toward Eleanor's room, trying not to think about the warmth that had climbed into her cheeks. In the kitchen later that afternoon, Abigail reached for a kettle before realizing the metal handle had grown hot. She pulled back with a startled gasp. Adrian, entering from the hall, crossed the room before anyone else reacted. Let me see. It is nothing. Abigail. Something in his voice made her stop arguing. He guided her hand beneath cool, running water, careful and precise, his tattooed fingers steady around her wrist without squeezing. For once, she had no joke ready. He opened the first aid cabinet, wrapped the reddened skin, then checked the bandage twice. You know, she said softly, for a terrifying man, you are very particular about gauze. I prefer problems that can be fixed. The answer landed differently than the others. Abigail looked at him. For a moment, neither moved. Adrian released her hand first. Outside the kitchen window, across the side garden beyond the iron fence, a camera lens flashed once in the afternoon light. The photograph appeared online before dinner. Abigail found out because one of the younger housekeepers walked into the laundry room holding a phone with the careful expression people used when they were carrying bad news. The headline did not mention medicine, Eleanor, or the investigation. It showed Adrian standing close to Abigail in the kitchen, his hand around her wrist while he wrapped the burn, and it turned the moment into something cheap. The article called her an ambitious maid. The comments were worse. Some laughed at her uniform. Others mocked her weight and suggested she had planned the whole thing to get Adrian's attention. Abigail read 3 lines before locking the screen. Well, she said, forcing a smile. Apparently, I am a criminal mastermind with terrible posture. The housekeeper did not laugh. That made it harder. By the time Adrian entered the room, Abigail was folding towels too carefully. He placed the phone face down on the table. The site will remove it. How? They will be given reasons. She looked up. That sounds expensive. It will be effective. That was not what I asked. His jaw shifted. He was used to solving problems by removing them. Abigail could see the decision already forming behind his eyes. Lawyers, phone calls, pressure, the whole machinery of his world turning because strangers had been cruel to her. A part of her wanted to let him do it. A larger part did not. Please do not destroy anybody's business because they called me fat. His gaze sharpened. That is not all they said. I know. Then why are you defending them? I am not. Abigail set down the towel. But if you crush everyone who humiliates me, I never find out whether I can stand without you. The words surprised both of them. Adrian remained by the table, his hands resting at his sides. You should not have to. No, but sometimes I will. She tried to smile again, but this one failed halfway. I have spent most of my life making jokes before other people could make them first. I am getting tired of helping them. Something in Adrian's face changed. He did not reach for her. He did not offer a speech. He simply picked up the phone, called Marcus, and said, "No pressure on the newspaper. Find out who took the photograph." That quiet choice meant more than Abigail expected. A voice came from the doorway, and issue a statement clearing her name. Vanessa stood there, still dressed perfectly despite the long day. Abigail stiffened. Vanessa entered and placed her own phone on the table. I already told my publicist that Abigail was assisting Eleanor during a medical emergency, and that any suggestion otherwise is false. Adrian looked at her carefully. Why? Vanessa gave him a tired smile. Because cruelty is still cruelty, even when it is useful to me. Abigail did not know what to do with that answer. For the first time, Vanessa looked less like an enemy and more like a woman who had not slept in days. Adrian stepped closer. You paid Mason's daughter's hospital bill. My mother told Abigail not to let me marry you. Someone altered medication inside this house. Stop giving me pieces. Vanessa's composure cracked at the edges. She looked toward the hall, then closed the laundry room door. Fine. Her voice dropped. I knew the medication had been changed. Abigail felt the air leave her lungs. Adrian said nothing. Vanessa pressed both palms against the table. But I was not trying to hurt Eleanor. She looked directly at him. I was trying to protect my brother. Vanessa kept her eyes on Adrian, but her fingers pressed so tightly against the edge of the table that the color drained from her knuckles. Noah was 18 when my father started moving money through accounts in his name, she said. He told him it was temporary. Family business. Nothing illegal. Noah believed him because he was still a kid trying to impress a man who never thought he was good enough. Abigail glanced at Adrian. He did not interrupt. Vanessa continued. Your mother found the transfers 2 months ago while reviewing old charitable accounts connected to the Moretti Foundation. She came to me before she came to you. Adrian's face changed by a fraction. Why? Because she knew what you would do. You would investigate every account, every signature, every person involved. And eventually Noah would be dragged into it. If he did nothing wrong, the truth would clear him. Vanessa gave a tired laugh. That is easy to say when your last name opens doors instead of closing them. Adrian absorbed the insult without reacting. Abigail noticed his thumb move once against the side of his hand, the smallest sign that the words had landed. So you changed my mother's medication, he said. I asked Mason to keep her calm while I found a way to separate Noah from my father's records. Vanessa looked toward Abigail. I did not ask him to make her weak. I did not ask him to confuse her. I wanted time. Abigail felt disappointment settle heavily in her chest. You decided she did not get to be fully herself because the truth was inconvenient. Vanessa looked at her sharply. I decided my brother should not lose his future because our father used him. Those are not the same thing. You think I do not know that now? Vanessa's voice broke for the first time. She looked away and took a slow breath. Mason told me the medication would only help her rest. When her condition got worse, he said it was the illness. I believed him because believing him solved my problem. Adrian stepped closer to the table. And the hospital bill. His daughter was sick. He mentioned it. I paid it. Maybe he thought that meant I owed him loyalty. Maybe I thought kindness would buy silence. I do not know anymore. Abigail watched Vanessa carefully. There was guilt there. Real guilt. But not the kind she had expected. Adrian turned to Marcus, who had been standing quietly near the door. Verify every account. Find the original transfer records and isolate anything connected to Noah Sterling. Marcus nodded. And Vanessa? Adrian looked at her. She stays here. Abigail stared at him. Vanessa did too. You are not calling the police? Abigail asked. Not yet. She admitted what she did. She admitted part of it. Adrian's voice remained controlled. If Mason used her plan for something larger, exposing her now warns him. Abigail felt something inside her cool. So she is useful. For the moment. Adrian looked at Abigail, but she stepped back before he could say more. Right. She folded her arms. Everything is a move on a board with you. Abigail, your mother was the board. She walked out before he could answer. Vanessa followed a minute later and found her near the staircase. You are angry because he did not choose you. Abigail turned. Vanessa's expression was not smug. It was almost sad. You think he protected you because you matter more than the plan. She lowered her voice. He did not choose you. He chose the investigation. Abigail avoided Adrian for the rest of the evening with the determination of someone trying very hard not to admit she was avoiding him. She reorganized Eleanor's blankets, checked the tea cabinet twice, and volunteered to polish silver that had already been polished. Every time footsteps approached, she found something else to do. Near 3 a.m, exhaustion finally caught her in the small sitting room beside Eleanor's bedroom. She woke to the smell of something burning. Abigail followed it downstairs and found Adrian standing in the kitchen, staring at a frying pan as if it had personally betrayed him. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie was gone, and a plate beside him held what might once have been eggs. Abigail leaned against the doorway. Should I call the fire department? Or are we still pretending this is breakfast? Adrian glanced over his shoulder. You were asleep. I was, until your cooking developed a distress signal. He slid the pan away from the burner. My mother asked for eggs. Abigail inspected the plate. Your mother loves you too much to tell you the truth. Which is that this omelet has seen things. Adrian looked down at it, then pushed a plate of toast toward her. Eat the toast. She laughed before she could stop herself. The sound softened the room. For a few minutes, neither mentioned Vanessa, Mason, altered records, or the argument near the staircase. Adrian poured coffee while Abigail spread jam on toast with her bandaged hand. You are still angry, he said. Observant. You think I used you. I think you use everything. He rested one hand on the counter. That is how I keep people safe. Abigail looked at him. Safe is not the same as trusted. He did not answer immediately. The refrigerator hummed between them. Finally, Adrian looked toward the dark window above the sink. When my father died, everyone expected me to know what came next. My mother, the men who worked for him, people twice my age. His voice stayed even, but his fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I learned quickly that if I looked uncertain, someone else made the decision for me. Abigail studied him more carefully. So you stopped looking uncertain. I stopped being uncertain. That sounds exhausting. His eyes returned to hers. It is efficient. That is not the same thing. A small smile touched her mouth. I make jokes when I am scared. You turn yourself into a filing cabinet. Adrian almost smiled. A filing cabinet. A very expensive one. The space between them changed. Not dramatically, just enough that Abigail became aware of how quietly he was watching her. He stepped closer, then stopped, giving her room to move away. She did not. Her hand rested beside his on the counter, only inches apart. You were right earlier, he said. About what? My mother was not a move on a board. Abigail's expression softened. Before she could answer, a sharp crack sounded from the garden. The security glass above the sink suddenly whitened at one point, a spiderweb pattern spreading across its surface. Adrian moved between Abigail and the window without hesitation. Somewhere in the house, an alarm began to ring. Marcus's voice came through Adrian's phone. Stay away from the windows. Someone just hit the kitchen glass from outside. Adrian kept Abigail behind the kitchen island until Marcus entered with 2 security men and confirmed the garden was clear. The white mark on the reinforced window sat almost exactly level with the small exterior camera mounted beneath the stone arch. Marcus looked at it once, then looked toward the dark yard. That was not meant for either of you. Abigail's pulse was still racing. That is supposed to make me feel better? It was aimed at the camera. Adrian stepped closer to the glass without touching it. Which camera? Marcus hesitated. Number 12. The answer changed Adrian's face more than fear would have. Camera 12 covered the narrow service path Dr. Mason had used 3 days earlier. More importantly, its memory unit held a duplicate of the footage showing Mason entering the medication room after physical therapy. The main copy had already been corrupted during the afternoon review. Marcus had quietly preserved the backup. Abigail looked from one man to the other. How many people knew that? 4, Marcus said. Adrian, me, the head of technical security, and the technician who made the copy. Adrian turned toward him. Vanessa? She was never told. Within 15 minutes, the household was locked down and every employee assigned to a room. Nobody shouted. That made the mansion feel even more unsettled. Abigail sat beside Eleanor until the older woman fell asleep again, then found Adrian in the security office beneath the west wing. 12 monitors covered one wall. Camera 12 was black. I hate this room, Abigail said from the doorway. Adrian looked back. You have been here 30 seconds. It has 12 screens and no windows. It feels like anxiety built a basement. Under different circumstances, he might have smiled. Tonight, his attention stayed on the access logs. Someone knew where the backup was stored. Abigail stepped closer. Could Mason know? Not unless someone told him. Marcus entered carrying 2 phones and a printed access report. His usually easy confidence was gone. Technical security checks out. The technician left at 6:20 and has been on camera at home since 7. Adrian took the paper. That leaves you. Marcus met his eyes. Yes. Abigail looked between them. The friendship underneath the suspicion was obvious precisely because neither man acknowledged it. There is something else, Marcus said. He placed his personal phone on the desk. You should see it before someone else finds it. Adrian did not reach for the device. Tell me. I spoke to Vanessa twice this week without reporting it. Abigail stared at him. Marcus continued before either of them could interrupt. Your mother asked me to investigate the Sterling accounts before she got sick. She made me promise not to tell you until I had something solid. Adrian's voice dropped. My mother gave you orders behind my back. She asked for help. And Vanessa? She found out I was looking. Marcus unlocked the phone and opened the call history. 2 private calls appeared beside Vanessa's number. One lasted 11 minutes. The second lasted 23. She offered information about her father if I kept Noah's name out of the first report. Adrian finally picked up the phone. Did you agree? Marcus looked at him directly. I told her I would consider anything that protected an innocent person without burying the truth. Abigail watched Adrian absorb the answer. He had spent years building a world where loyalty meant being told everything. Now his mother, his closest friend, and his fiancée had all decided he could not be trusted with the whole picture. Before he could speak, another file opened on Marcus's phone. It was an audio message sent from Vanessa less than an hour before the kitchen alarm. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus, stop searching the West Wing records. Someone else is monitoring the house, and I do not think it is Mason. Vanessa's warning sat on the screen between them, simple enough to read and impossible to ignore. Adrian looked at Marcus, then at Abigail, then back at the message as if the words might change if he waited long enough. You believed her? He asked. Marcus folded his arms. I believed she was scared. That was not my question. No, I did not trust her, but I trusted the fear. Abigail watched Adrian carefully. He did not raise his voice, but the room seemed to tighten around him. For years, he had built his life on information arriving before danger did. Now every person closest to him had been carrying a private piece of the same truth. Eleanor had hidden an investigation. Marcus had hidden his conversations with Vanessa. Vanessa had hidden what she did to buy time for Noah. Even Abigail had seen things inside his home that he had missed. Your mother was trying to protect you, Abigail said. Adrian turned toward her. By keeping me blind? Maybe by keeping you from turning every problem into a war room. Marcus gave Abigail a look that suggested she had just said something nobody else in Chicago would dare say. Adrian did not react immediately. Then he looked down at the monitors. Everyone keeps deciding what I can handle. You do the same thing, Abigail said. You decide what everyone else needs before they can tell you. His gaze lifted. There was no anger in it. That made her continue. You protected me from the newspaper. You kept me near Eleanor. You moved people around this house like pieces because you thought that was the safest answer. It usually is. Safe is not always honest. The words landed harder than she intended. Marcus quietly gathered the access reports. I am going to check the West Wing manually. Adrian let him leave. When the door closed, Abigail suddenly became aware of how small the security room felt. Adrian removed his phone from his pocket and placed it on the desk. Then he took the compact weapon he normally kept concealed beneath his jacket and set it inside a locked drawer before closing it. Abigail watched without speaking. One night, he said, no hidden calls, no private reports, no decisions made for you. She looked at the phone. That sounds dangerously close to trust. Do not make me regret it. There he is. The corner of her mouth lifted. Adrian came around the desk and stopped several feet away, leaving the space between them entirely hers. You were right about my mother, he said. Abigail's expression softened. That must have hurt. Which part? Finding out she did not trust you with everything. He looked toward the dark monitor where camera 12 should have been. She trusted me to solve problems. Maybe she did not trust me to listen. Abigail did not answer with a joke this time. She simply stepped closer. Adrian's hand rose, paused near her face, then dropped as if he had reconsidered touching her without permission. Abigail noticed. Her eyes moved from his hand to his face. You can ask, she said quietly. Can I kiss you? She smiled, nervous and warm. That was very efficient. Abigail. Yes. He kissed her gently, brief enough to feel careful, long enough to change the room. When they separated, she was still smiling. Then her phone vibrated. An unknown number had sent a video. Abigail opened it. Eleanor appeared on the screen, seated upright in her bedroom, eyes clear and voice steady. Abigail Brooks stole money from me. The smile vanished from Abigail's face. Adrian took one step closer. On the video, Eleanor continued. She has been lying to this family from the beginning. Abigail watched the video twice before she realized she was holding her breath. Eleanor looked alert, her silver hair neatly pinned, her voice steady enough to sound convincing. Adrian took the phone from Abigail without touching the screen. When was this recorded? I do not know. Send it to Marcus. Before Abigail could answer, footsteps approached the security room. Marcus entered with a woman in a charcoal suit and 2 uniformed investigators behind her. The woman introduced herself as Claire Bennett, an attorney who had worked with the Moretti family for years. Her expression carried no accusation, only urgency. We have a problem. Marcus placed a folder on the desk. A transfer was flagged 30 minutes ago. $48,000 left one of Eleanor's personal accounts last week. Abigail looked confused. What does that have to do with me? Nobody answered immediately. Claire opened the folder and turned one page toward her. The receiving account carried Abigail Brooks's name, address, and social security information. Her stomach dropped. I have never seen that account. One investigator spoke calmly. We need to ask you some questions downtown. Adrian stepped between Abigail and the door, not threatening anyone, simply becoming impossible to ignore. You can ask them here. Abigail looked at him. Adrian, you are not going anywhere until we know who created that account. That is exactly why I should go. His eyes narrowed. No. Abigail almost smiled at the familiar certainty in his voice, but nothing about the moment was funny. You told me one night without decisions made for me. The word stopped him. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If you use your name to keep me here, everyone will think I needed you to hide something. I know you did not take that money. Then trust me enough to prove it without standing in front of me. Adrian's jaw tightened, but this time he moved aside. Claire offered to accompany Abigail. Before leaving, Abigail asked for her phone back. She replayed Eleanor's video while the investigators waited. Something bothered her. Not the words. The room. Eleanor sat beside the east window, where the antique clock usually rested on the mantel behind her. Abigail had dusted that clock every Thursday for nearly 4 months. She knew its crooked Roman numerals, its tiny brass pendulum, and the hairline crack across the face. In the video, the clock appeared on the wrong side of the frame. Abigail paused it. Wait. Marcus leaned closer. What? She pointed. That clock has always been to the left of Mrs. Moretti's chair. Adrian looked at the image. Maybe someone moved it. No, Abigail enlarged the frame. Look at the numbers. The lettering was reversed. Even the small embroidered E on Eleanor's handkerchief faced backward. The video was mirrored. Claire frowned. Why would anyone do that? Abigail stared at the dark strip of reflected glass behind Eleanor. A shape stood near the edge of the original frame, almost completely hidden after the image had been flipped and cropped. She could make out part of a shoulder and the shine of a watch. Her pulse quickened, because they were not trying to change what Mrs. Moretti said. Abigail looked at Adrian. They were trying to hide who was standing beside the camera. Claire paused the video and enlarged the reflection until the image blurred into blocks of gray. Marcus leaned closer. That watch. Adrian saw it too. Silver face, dark leather band, narrow red stitching. Dr. Mason had worn the same watch every time he visited Eleanor. Claire immediately called the investigators back into the room. Within 20 minutes, the original video file was recovered from a cloud account linked to Mason's office. The unedited version showed him standing beside Eleanor, reading from a paper while she repeated the accusation against Abigail. Eleanor looked awake, but her eyes kept drifting toward him for direction. He coached her. Abigail said quietly. Adrian's hand tightened around the back of a chair. He did not move toward the door. He did not make a threat. Instead, he looked at Claire. Get a warrant for his financial records. Vanessa appeared in the doorway before Claire could answer. Her face had lost its careful polish. You will find payments from me. Everyone turned. She stepped inside. I already told you I paid him to keep Eleanor calm. What I did not know was that he opened accounts using information he had access to through the family medical records. Marcus pulled up a banking report. The fake account in Abigail's name had been created 3 weeks earlier. The routing information led to a private trust connected to Mason. Another transfer had been prepared under Noah Sterling's name. Vanessa closed her eyes. He was going to frame Noah too. He already started, Adrian said. Vanessa looked at him. For the first time, she seemed less afraid of losing Adrian than of what her choices had allowed. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and went pale. It is Noah. She answered on speaker. Mason's voice came through instead. Calm. Professional. Vanessa, I need you to stop the audit. Your brother is with me. and he is very confused about why his name appears on certain accounts. Adrian's eyes sharpened. Mason continued, "No one needs to make this dramatic. I want 48 hours. After that, Noah walks away clean, and the Moretti family forgets my name." Vanessa gripped the phone. "You used me. You created an opportunity. I used it." Abigail watched Vanessa's face change. Shame gave way to decision. "Where are you?" Mason hesitated, then gave an address for his private clinic outside the city. Adrian turned to Marcus. "Call the investigators. Nobody goes alone." Vanessa shook her head. "If he sees police first, he will destroy the records." Abigail stepped toward her. "Then give him what he expects." An hour later, Vanessa entered Mason's clinic carrying a folder that appeared to contain the audit authorization he wanted. Adrian, Abigail, Marcus, Claire, and the investigators waited in a conference room 2 doors away, connected through a live call hidden inside Vanessa's phone. Mason began talking almost immediately. He explained too much because he believed he had won. He admitted creating the false accounts. He admitted using Eleanor's confusion to record the statement against Abigail. He even admitted that Vanessa had never known about the money transfers. When Claire gave the signal, investigators entered and secured the records before Mason could delete them. Noah was found in an office, shaken but unharmed. Vanessa reached him first. He folded into her arms, and whatever remained of her careful image disappeared. Adrian stood several feet away, watching without triumph. Abigail came beside him. "You could have crushed everyone," she said softly. "You did not." His eyes stayed on his mother's future, his broken engagement, and the people cleaning up the truth around them. "I am learning." Then Claire approached with one final document. "There is something else. Eleanor changed her estate plan 6 weeks ago." Adrian looked down at the signature page. Abigail's name was written beneath a line none of them expected. Eleanor Moretti had named her as the independent witness to a sealed statement that could clear Noah completely. Several months later, morning sunlight filled the Moretti garden with the first warmth of spring. Eleanor sat beneath a white oak tree with a blanket across her knees, complaining that everyone treated her like glass even though she had already beaten Adrian at cards twice that week. Her recovery had been slow, but the fog was gone from her eyes. Mason had pleaded guilty to fraud, medical misconduct, and falsifying financial records. The sealed statement Eleanor had prepared before her illness confirmed that Noah Sterling had never controlled the accounts opened in his name. Vanessa accepted responsibility for interfering with Eleanor's medication and cooperating with Mason, but her testimony helped investigators uncover the larger scheme. She lost her engagement, her carefully protected reputation, and much of the life she had planned, yet Noah kept his freedom. When Vanessa visited Eleanor one final time before leaving Chicago, she did not ask for forgiveness. She simply placed the old account files on the table and said, "I should have trusted the truth sooner." Eleanor answered, "So should all of us." Abigail never returned to cleaning bedrooms. With Eleanor's encouragement, she enrolled in a certification program for elder care and helped create a small foundation that offered emergency support to caregivers who could not afford to miss work. Adrian funded it quietly until Abigail discovered his name buried in the paperwork. "You know, anonymous donations are supposed to be anonymous," she told him. "Marcus filed it. You own Marcus. That is an inaccurate description of employment. Tell him that." Adrian had changed in ways his people noticed before he did. He asked questions before giving orders. He listened through uncomfortable answers. He even allowed Abigail to reorganize the kitchen, although he drew the line when she labeled one cabinet emergency chocolate. "That is essential infrastructure," she insisted. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Adrian found her beside Eleanor's rose bushes, wearing jeans, a soft green sweater, and dirt on one cheek. He stood there for a moment without speaking. Abigail looked up. "If you are about to tell me I planted these wrong, remember that your mother approved everything. I am not here about the roses." Something in his voice made her set down the garden trowel. Adrian reached into his coat and took out a small velvet box. Abigail stared at it, then at him. Oh, he opened it. The ring was elegant, simple, and somehow exactly right. "I spent most of my life believing love meant keeping people safe from everything," he said. "You taught me it also means trusting them enough to stand beside me." Abigail's eyes filled. "That was almost romantic." "Almost. You still sound like you are negotiating a merger." His mouth curved. Abigail Brooks, will you marry me? She let him wait 3 seconds purely because she knew he hated uncertainty. Then she smiled through her tears. Yes. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a gentle embrace. From 10 feet away, Eleanor cleared her throat. I was beginning to think I would have to arrange this myself. Abigail laughed against Adrian's shoulder. He closed his eyes, defeated by both women and strangely happy about it. Months earlier, Abigail had entered the Moretti home believing kindness meant staying small enough not to trouble anyone. Adrian had believed strength meant never needing anyone at all. They had both been wrong. She had found the courage to stand where she belonged, and he had learned that opening his heart did not make him weaker. As Eleanor watched them beneath the spring sun, Abigail understood that exposing the truth had saved more than one life. It had given all of them the chance to become people they had once been too afraid to be.